So this is part A of the Kudila television channel being broadcast online by the Kudila campaign. Carrying the main theme of world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. Fleet Street being the newspapers published from Fleet Street originally and published from addresses in London. And the Fleet Street newspapers are currently, there are 10. Daily titles that are falsely called national newspapers. National is completely untenable because the nation that these newspapers represent at most can be the Little England, and they don't represent Cornwall, they don't represent Wales, they don't represent Scotland, and they don't represent Northern Ireland, all of which are subsumed in the other misleading title called the United Kingdom. So today's Financial Times has got an admission that we predicted would happen. We predicted, the latest prediction we made on this program was only a few days ago. And in our prediction, we specifically, diagnostically, evidentially said that the overhyping of the vaccine and the overhyping of the AstraZeneca vaccine as constituting the latest kind of platform from the Brexiteering liars, that overhyping was completely false, untrue, untruthful, and would be exposed sooner as being so. And here is the first indication in the Financial Times of today, Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021. The main page one lead story in the Financial Times today says Johnson puts faith in AstraZeneca. Well, Johnson puts faith in AstraZeneca jab that is vaccine. After South Africa halts rollout, it needs a bit of a detailed reading for viewers to get the full factual picture. And the subheading reads, doubt cast on power to fight variant. Now that is the main kind of aspect of the story that reads, Johnson puts faith in AstraZeneca jab after South Africa halts rollout. Now it's a piece by Sebastian Payne. Sebastian Payne is politically an infant, and his infantile, idiotic, racist, stupid covering of the corrupt Mayor Luthuraman is still online, uncorrected. We shall come back to Sebastian Payne in due course later, but this one is just for the record that his name appears to be the name of the writer, main writer of the piece. Now, Sebastian Payne, authored piece reads, Boris Johnson and his ministers moved to calm nerves over the UK's vaccine program yesterday after South Africa stopped using the Oxford University AstraZeneca jab over concerns that it might be less effective with the country's new virus strain. That's an overloaded piece of lying by Sebastian Payne on the Financial Times. Because it is stuffed full of contradictions and procrastinations in the same paragraph. It uses concerns, but that is not the truth. The truth is that serious concern has prevailed, has existed right from the beginning about the effectiveness of the program. And long before, South Africa was added as an excuse to undermine the strength of the doubts and concerns about the effectiveness of the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine. And Sebastian Payne also uses the phrase less effective. It's not anywhere near as effective. And then it qualifies as an excuse, as the reason for the excuse, the new virus strain in South Africa. It's nothing to do with South Africa, nothing to do with the new virus strain. The original strain, the mainstream of the pandemic, has not been tackled by this virus from the beginning. And we have been saying that there has been no evidence. There is no clinical data. There is no test evidence to justify any of the claims about the vaccine. This has nothing to do with the European Union, nothing to do with the French, nothing to do with the South Africans. The lunatic, corrupt Brexiteering promotion of Boris Johnson based on AstraZeneca vaccine has been intentionally corrupt and criminally intended to mislead the millions in England and the so-called rest of the UK. And what we are predicting today, 9th of February 2021, is that there will be other admissions presented in disguised forms, just like the Sebastian Payne piece on the Financial Times page 1 today is. But there will be admissions to the fact that the AstraZeneca vaccine or any other vaccine is not working. That is the main fact, the main substance that will be admitted, but in disguised forms. And the Financial Times is the Fleet Street paper that is actually saying for the first time, any Fleet Street paper, in these words in the editorial on page 24 of today's Financial Times, the first editorial, There are two editorials, and the first one says United States Senate must convict former President Trump. This is the straightest possible statement that has been seen in any of the Fleet Street papers ever. And the Google founder is criticizing the American government's approach to 5G, and he's calling that approach as a threat to the digital future of the 5G. We shall be talking more about that in due course. There is a piece again, which is very rare in the headline at least. It's a woman that appears to be a staff member or equivalent staff to a staff member called Sarah O'Connor. And the headline says, "Why I was wrong to be optimistic about robots." And there is more. There's more item. The Financial Times has got somebody writing from the USA arguing for Donald Trump to be kind of convicted. And there is also a piece about the American states with oil as part of the economy, that those states are preparing to oppose Biden's climate change policy. And there is an admission on page 6 of the Financial Times, Tuesday, 9th of February 2021, which is headlined, "Mutations Threaten Global Vaccine Strategy." As more people are inoculated or infected, Darwinian pressure will grow on the SARS-CoV-2 virus to evolve variants. And there is a breakdown. The AstraZeneca has signed the most vaccine contracts. So COVID-19 shots under contract, doses in billions, UK, the European Union, United States, and other. So AstraZeneca has got the highest, and then BioNTech, Pfizer, and then J&J, then Novavax, then Sanofi GSX, then there is Moderna, and there is Gamaleya Research Institute. Gamaleya sounds like an Egyptian version of the Arabic, but it could be based somewhere else other than in Arabia, but it is connected definitely. The naming is connected with the Arabic word Jamal, the origin, which is partially kind of differently spelt in some of the countries, especially in Egypt. Now, the Financial Times is the first one that we have looked at today so far. And we are now looking at the latest propaganda for the vaccine. On the front page of the I newspaper. The I newspaper has become now like the Daily Mail and the Express and the Murdoch scum in terms of the propaganda narrative that it is carrying. And that is the summary of what we can say about this criminal, fraudulent, lying facade that it says it is not like the Daily Mail or the Scum or the Daily Express or the Star or the Boris Graf. And this heading about the crook Philip Green gives away the kind of pretentious I newspaper. It says pressure grows on Sir Philip to plug Arcadia's 350 million pension deficit. Now this crook, this thief, is not to be addressed with any word before his name that suggests that he is respectable, reliable, and the lying Daily Express runs a misleading headline on the front page, the splash, saying that it's a disgrace that no border virus checks have been put in place. But it's a lie, because it's not blaming the Brexiteers fronted by Johnson, who is responsible or who owes the duty to protect people traveling from South Africa. But it's actually blaming the South Africans as the causers of the lack of safety, etc., etc. And there is a piece on page 9 of the Daily, Suppress the Truth, by the deeply sick-makingly corrupt kind of editorial policy that hides this on page 9, and it says Brenda, that in other words the Queen Elizabeth II, is to profit from £9 billion bonanza, and that is apparently connected with the wind farm windfall for the House of Windsor. And then there is an admission which is shocking, that the 13-year-old neo-Nazi has been 13-year-old neo-Nazi terrorist spared jail. It is almost impossible that this neo-Nazi would be a Muslim or a black 13-year-old. It would be definitely a white one. And there is the expose of the corrupt racist court bureaucracy in this country. Because several so-called court decisions concerning white criminals, especially murderous blonde white women, show the corruption and criminality and the kind of sexist bias towards blonde white criminal women. Several of them have been spared jail, and the judges, almost all of them men in those cases, have praised the blonde murderous killers and plotters. In fact, more than one of those male judges making the sexist, biased decisions in favor of blonde women criminals have referred to their looks, the criminals' attractiveness or attractive appearances. So we are not making it up. The fact is that the English judiciary is corrupt, dishonest, and criminally operated on man and women, or man and woman. And there is no evidence that there is in the UK Parliament any movement that even recognizes this criminality. And this criminality and corruption of the British judicial bureaucracy needs to be seen as part and parcel of the criminal disregard for the duty to protect people, and that extends to the entirety of the policing operations in this country. And the Parliament is not doing anything, and nor is the so-called opposition. Looking at the papers, Fleet Street papers, let's say in terms of the substance, in terms of the evidence of the last 70 years, let's say, we could go back to the last 200 years, but let's say the last 70 years, 70. The papers have been totally blank, empty on the role played by the police, the role played by the various forms of the so-called Ministry of Justice, so-called, and the ministers in the Department for Justice, so-called. Whether the ministry or the cabinet minister has been called the Lord Chancellor until recently, or whatever else. And this includes the criminal role played by the absolute majority of the licensed law traders. The licensed law traders is another original phrase based entirely on the evidence and created by the Khudilar campaign to refer to so-called barristers, so-called solicitors, and the so-called legal executives, all of whom have got collectively the monopoly of access to practice in the name of the law. And those barristers, solicitors, legal executives also are intended to be treated by us along with the various members of the judiciary. We say 99% of the judicial post holders are liars and committing crimes of distortion, denial, obstruction every time they make a decision. And again, there is no analysis, there is no auditing of the criminality. There is no auditing by the Houses of Parliament. In fact, the two Houses of Parliament, the House of Commons and the House of Peers, have significant numbers of licensed law traders, either retired or still in practice in various forms. So Fleet Street so-called newspapers are devoid, intentionally, corruptly, criminally, racistly, imperialistically devoid of any reference to the behavior of the barristers, solicitors, the police, and the holders of posts and positions in the corrupt, criminal, racist judicial bureaucracy. This is another aspect of why our program is called, and we call it, World Exclusive Diagnosis of Fleet Street. Reading the Fleet Street papers will not inform the readers about the reality of society, life, and behavior in England, because it is mainly England based. And there is a page one, big picture of one of the nastiest racist stooges doing intentional damage against the idea of a Muslim community. This one is more effective as a denier, an attacker, and violator of the rights of the millions of Muslims in Britain and hundreds of millions of or billions of Muslims across the world. This is called Samira Ahmed. This criminal has been given spots by Channel 4 News and Channel 4 Television, as well as by ITV, BBC, and Sky News, to carry out open, brazen attacks on the ordinary lives and rights of the people in the Muslim community. Now, this program is not part of any organization about Islamic activity or Islamic agenda. And the reason is that we are impartial, objective. And when we say that the crook, Samira Ahmed, is now being put to represent or present the mastermind program that the racist, criminal, liar, and crook John Humphreys has presented for 18 years. This shows that the BBC and the Boris Graf actually treat Samira Ahmed as John Humphreys. Totally racist, anti-Muslim, corrupt, and criminal. And this is the analysis we are basing on the evidence of her role and behavior over the last, well, let's say almost 30 years since she was launched. And Samira Ahmed is the second Muslim named criminal stooge used by Fleet Street and the mainstream in the UK. The first one was Zainab, whose Badawi name we have edited into Badway. These two were among the Muslim stooges and colluders in the propaganda war against the targets of George Bush and Tony Blair's massacres in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in the rest of the Middle East in the last, let's say, 30 years. Zainab Badway, in fact, was physically dispatched to a spot near Iraq by the BBC, from where she was filmed holding a copy of the magazine, whichever it was, whether it was The Listener or one of those magazines that actually had a cover about the then imminent massacring attacks on the Iraqis and the others in the other countries neighboring Iraq, other Muslim populated countries neighboring Iraq. And there has been no evidence. This is the only program that is doing this. There is no evidence that any comment has been made about the role played by Zainab Badway or Samira Ahmed. Samira Ahmed has been promoted mainly because of her lies and lying against Muslim countries. And the users, her handlers and users in the propaganda war, put her mainly as a, quote, Muslim woman. But she can be, on the evidence of her behavior, she can be described substantially as a weaponized strata of society that her targeting has focused on. Strata of Muslim societies, that is. So she is now being promoted to present this mastermind, which is an additional lying platform that she has been given by the BBC. And she has been promoted in this Boris Graph in an exceptionally rare kind of promotion of a BBC face by the Telegraph, Boris Graph. Because Boris Graph is dedicated against the idea of the public sector broadcaster, on the ground that the public sector broadcaster exposes the fundamental corruption and criminality of the private sector broadcasting business and operations. Samira Ahmed has been presenting the BBC's so-called viewers program, and she has been doing this for several years. And on any day, any average day of BBC's broadcasting, there would be more racist perpetrations aimed against Muslims, against Africans, against Asians than would be the case against the Little Englanders, against the ordinary so-called indigenous, white-skinned members of the community or society. And yet, Samira Ahmed has prevented the objections and the comments from the targeted victims of society, of racism and denial and distortion by the BBC. It's a fact. It's not something that can be disputed, because a look at the hundreds of programs that Samira Ahmed has fronted will show that she has been excluding, obstructing Muslims, and the evidence based on the contacts that have been made by various members of the public to her program show that she has been in denial of receipt of the contacts even. So she's even worse than Trevor, terrible P-lips. And she's most certainly worse than the other anti-Muslim operatives given platforms to distort and deny the truth in order to deny and deprive the Muslims generally, whatever the level of activity in society the Muslims are engaged in, Muslim as a whole are the targets of obstruction and denial. And Samira Ahmad, the Muslims-born so-called journalist, is one of the worst perpetrators of the crimes against the truth and one of the worst colluders of anti-Muslim racism and hatred and denial. And we move straight on to the Boris graphs, page 14. And this one is byline to Joshua Rosenberg. Now, Joshua is spelled Joshua, and Rosenberg is spelled Rozenberg. Now, Rosenberg is, or has been, not currently, but has been the longest in post correspondent about the law and the courts at the BBC. And his role was absolutely the same as Shamira Ahmad, Trevor Terrible P-lips, and other anti-Muslim racist liars. Now, I had a personal, physical kind of direct confrontation with Joshua Rosenberg, although I had other organizational and campaigning diagnostic exposes about him for many years. But this one was about the corrupt organization called the Law Society, which is the organization that is the body for the licensed law traders, solicitors. And it is the licensor of the solicitors' kind of professional certificates. But before the Law Society had this framework that is currently in place, divided into two. One is the solicitors' disciplinary tribunal, and the main body is solicitors' regulation authority. There were complaints about the fact that the Law Society was in denial of complaints against solicitors, and various appointments were made, including chief executive post holders in succession, were being exposed as colluders with the corruption practiced by the Law Society through the licensed law traders. So there was one of the news conferences was held in a hotel in the Strand where I attended. And when I was questioning the Law Society, Joshua Rosenberg was kind of making excuses and timid remarks about the gravity of the corrupt role being played by the Law Society. So I challenged him, as I have been doing in the context of every action I participate in, based entirely on the evidence, not in any way based on any kind of agenda by me to benefit from any exchange. The only agenda that I follow is to establish the truth of the situation. And I am guided by the objective international standard of neutrality, universal transparency, universal fairness, and all the other things that are totally compatible with and are traceable to the founding declarations of the United Nations and, of course, of the various other international treaties that are based on those declarations and aims. So Rosenberg was not able to answer my evidentially, factually challenging questions. So this criminal is now doing this propaganda piece in the Boris Graph. And it does not bear reading. It is completely a piece of criminality. And the Daily Mirror is doing the similar criminal propaganda for the vaccine. Let's say it's not presenting report, it is not presenting information. And they've got a piece on page 2 of the Mirror today that says, Trump film riveting and horrifying. There is a film about Trump that will be shown as part of the impeachment kind of campaign that starts today, I think. And there is this stooge, Simon Woolley, founder of Operation Black Vote. Now, Simon Woolley is a crook and a stooge. Although it says that he founded the Operation Black Vote, the operation is not intended to expose the racist abuse of the electoral system, so-called. And Woolley has been one of the backers of the corrupt post of mayor in Tower Hamlets. Now, Woolley has no connection whatsoever with opposition to racism, except when it promotes him as a token diversity quotient. He was one of the diversity quotient that Theresa May invited to number 10 Downing Street in October 2017, I think. I mean, he's now saying that most Black people don't have confidence in the NHS or the vaccine regime. And he said that lack of trust. Now, it doesn't say racism of the NHS bureaucracy or the health system, so-called, or public service, so-called. He doesn't say that. And if he did say that, he would not be made a member of the House of Peers, which he has been. So, Uli is one of the agents of racist status quo that have been put in the House of Peers. We previously discussed the crook Harman Ousley. But these are only two. There are several others. And so Fleet Street never publishes any commentary based on the evidence, based on the campaigns on the ground against any aspect of racist state. By giving the likes of Ousley and Uli token spots and platforms, the racists at Fleet Street, in Fleet Street, commit two additional crimes. One of denying the truth and diverting, and the other is obstructing the actual truthful campaigners against racism and other values. Today is the 9th of February. Today is the 9th of February 2021. And on the 9th of February, we shall talk about the 9th of February a bit later or in the next part, but we talk about this criminal liar, Sir Kevan Collins. Now, Kevan Collins is being described by the Dirty Digger Murdoch scum on page 2 as the new education catch-up czar. Now, this liar was responsible while he was in post as the so-called chief executive in the Tower Hamlets Council. This liar was responsible for fabricating a series of lies that included justifying the lying he committed in order to allow the series of lies committed by those backing the call in 2009-2010 for a referendum to be staged in order to have a corrupt elected mayor post foisted on Tower Hamlets. So the details have already been published, but essentially this criminal lied serially. He was given a platform by the crooks on Channel 4 television who allowed him one edition of the undercover boss lying slot to exhibit his lying as he is doing the community in Tower Hamlets a service which he wasn't doing. This criminal appeared with a criminal called Colin Cormack and a number of crooks in post in the so-called housing department in the Tower Hamlets Council, based in the Roman Road. And this crook faked his name, as did the crook Colin Cormack. We have discussed at length the series of lying programs, propaganda, broadcast by Channel 4, lying in justifying the eviction and degeneration and removal from their communities of thousands of people in Tower Hamlets, and the evictions of thousands of people from their homes in Tower Hamlets. So the fact that he has been appointed the new czar for catch-up on education shows that they have found another crook to justify their unfitness in the context of the duty to protect people and prevent the spread of the virus. And the Daily Mail is running a front page story, exposed Oxford, that is Oxford University, sells out professorship to Chinese firm with links to spy agency. The Chinese women operating in the USA as spies has become the news very recently, and now they are catching up in Britain by focusing on Chinese women spies operating in Britain. And they're now saying that Oxford University Chair of Physics was named as Wickham Chair of Physics. That was established in 1900. And in 2021, the Oxford University has sold the name and renamed it as Tencent Wickham, after China firm with links to spy agency. Influence for sale. The heritage there should be priceless. Why we have only ourselves to blame, says Edward Lucas in a commentary. But the main so-called investigation is done by David Rose, whom we have discussed on this program before. Now, David Rose is not as innocent of links with spying and secret agencies and secret operations as people aware of his role, controversial role, in taking part in a leading kind of position, opposing those who investigated the role played by a number of Jewish people who were accused of collusion, collaboration with the Nazis against the ordinary Jewish people who were targeted. And David Rose has remained unapologetic over his role in denying the right of the people to investigate all of Nazi regime's behavior and the role of all of the influence or influential Jewish people concerned. So today's Daily Mail, Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021, has this two-page spread, mainly by David Rose, which uses the term influence sellers, or the phrase. Now, the Nazi regime had influential Jewish people, so the allegation goes, who betrayed the Jewish people generally in Germany when the Nazis struck. So Fleet Street is not written by, reported by, edited by innocents. Quite apart from that particular aspect, the Daily Mail, along with the Times of the day, played serial roles of promoting the Nazis before the Nazis started the genocide, or before the actual war that included the genocide of the people, including millions of Jewish people. There were other people that were victims of genocide, but they are not mentioned by the Fleet Street. But the Daily Mail was the appeaser and praiser of the Nazis, as was the Times. And currently, in the last fortnight, the so-called military coup in Burma has been reported by Fleet Street as if the genocide against the Rohingya Muslims didn't take place. And they're now treating Aung San Suu Kyi, who was the leader of the regime that did the genocide and who has since been justifying the genocide and the hatred and the massacres by the Burmese of the Muslims. That painting her, this criminal perpetrator against the Muslim Rohingya targets, as the victim of the coup. So in one shot, they're distorting the truth of what is happening in Burma. It's not a coup against democracy. It's a coup by the coalition of Aung San Suu Kyi and her military co-criminals to divert attention away from the genocide and the crimes against humanity that they together committed against Muslims, to divert attention and to create a pretext, that is the coup so-called, to exonerate Aung San Suu Kyi of the crimes that she is guilty of and she committed. So, what is happening in Burma today has been happening for the last few decades, all the decades since the Nazis were apparently replaced in Germany. The reason why the wars against people of particular ethnicity, faith, or race or racial groups have continued is because the founding aims of the United Nations have never been implemented, really. Which is why China, being a member of the Security Council, has been committing genocidal attacks and massacres of the Muslims, most notably known as Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur Muslims are descendants and connected with the Turks, the Turkish people mainly. And the genocide is not the only crime against humanity of the Uyghurs. The Chinese regime encourages people, the Han Chinese and others, to rape Uyghur Muslim women. And it openly describes the Uyghur Muslim women as attractive, sexually attractive, because of their white skin and all the other things that they've been saying. So the United Nations doesn't concern itself with these violations. And it's important because the United Nations every day posts on social media bogus concerns about comparatively less dangerous violations happening elsewhere, not in China. So we shall be continuing. This is 10:44 hours GMT in London on Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021.